Hey, it's Mirna from Trainer's Toolbox. Welcome to the Trainer's Toolbox podcast, a place where you can discover practical and effective tools and tips to make your workshops more insightful, engaging, and memorable. You are at the right place if you're looking to become the best trainer you can be and design truly impactful learning experiences. Ready? Let's dive in. You know that state when you're super immersed in something you're doing? Usually it happens when you're doing something that's a little bit difficult for you, but you're also really motivated and you want to do it well. And through that, you have this deep enjoyment of that activity. Maybe it happens to you when you're facilitating or doing training. Maybe it happens when you're doing your next workshop design. Or very often, for many of us, it happens also in the area of sports, different leisure activities, especially those related to arts, music, or moving our body. It's also the state known as being in the zone or blissful immersion, the moment when you're really, really immersed in the flow, in the state of flow, and kind of not even feeling that the time is passing. Maybe we feel time is passing really fast, or maybe that the day lasts forever. We forget about the time, we forget about the people around us, and we really, really just enjoy the thing that we're doing. We call that state the state of flow. It's an incredible state for many things, but one of the things it's best for, it's actually learning. So how would it be to have your learners in your workshop in that state for most of the workshop? That they're really immersed, really motivated, ready to challenge themselves, feeling in the zone, feeling in the flow of things. It's kind of a dream state for every trainer. Because flow, not only is it very enjoyable state and one we feel good when we immerse ourselves in it, it is also a state that's connected to much faster learning, to more creativity, and to high performance. And it has a wonderful consequence that people, when they're in flow, they also keep on raising the bar for themselves a little bit, step by step. So you practically have a learner who is in a healthy way pushing their own limits and raising the bar and getting out of the comfort zone without you needing to nudge them to go there. Being an ideal state for learning, today we're going to drill down a little bit into how can we actually create that state of flow for our learners. But I have to give you the bad news right away. We can't really totally engineer it and create it in a step-by-step, algorithm-like or recipe-like mode. It's much more of a state that emerges naturally when we do set the stage right, and in which people love entering naturally if we allow them to unleash it and if we remove some of the obstacles. So you can think about it a little bit like this, a little bit like sleep, If you would want to have a really good sleep, you could go about it by saying, now I will have really good sleep. I'm going to sleep at this time, I will sleep right away, I will sleep deep and for this many hours. But you know that this will not happen. You cannot willpower yourself into sleep. You cannot plan the quality of your sleep or even, sadly, the quantity of your sleep. However, if you want to sleep better, you can approach it from perspective of setting the right foundations, right? If you protect your sleeping space, if you make it a dark room, if you protect it from noise, if you ensure it's good temperature, if you maybe relax a little bit before going to sleep so your mind is ready for sleep. All of these preconditions are very likely to actually result in that state happening naturally and evolving naturally. So there is no need to always over-engineer it, but we do want to set the stage and set the right preconditions. So in this episode, I'm talking about right preconditions. I'll seek to keep it as practical as I can. Really kind of this is what you need to do for flow to, naturally happen within the environment of your workshop. But I do want to mention that as this is one of my favorite topics and one we can go way deeper into and actually play with your workshops and how to create it. I'm also doing a masterclass on this topic, so if you're curious about that, make sure to check it in the episode description. In the meantime, let's start with the first steps. First precondition that must exist for flow to happen is a specific balance between two things. And that is balance between our perception of challenge that is ahead of us. So when we engage in an activity, that activity is to some level challenging. And how we perceive that challenge, that's one of the factors that will influence will we enter flow or not. And the second factor that needs to be in balance is our perception of our own ability to pull out that activity, to deal with it well, to actually have a success when engaging with that activity. And we call that in official flow theory by Csikszentmihalyi, and in his research, he calls it perception of skills. I prefer to call it our perception of our ability, because I feel sometimes it's a bit broader than the skill. It's also about our confidence, about our resources, and so on. But I'm sharing with you an original model as well. So first, an ultimate and most important precondition that needs to happen for someone to be able to enter flow is that these two are in balance, that we perceive the challenge ahead of us as fairly balanced with our ability to deal with it. That means we perceive the activity that we are getting involved with, let's say within a workshop, is challenging to us. It's a little bit difficult. It's not like super easy. We do need to stretch a bit. But we also perceive that if we put in a bit of effort and focus, we have really good chances of actually doing it well, right? That's that balance between challenge and the skill. And to be fair, it can also mean that the challenge is at kind of mid-level, that it's challenging enough, not like super, but still stretching us a bit. Because what challenge serves for is just to pull in our focus, that we're ready to put in effort. But if challenge is more like medium level, then also our perception of our skill and ability needs to be like medium level to deal with this kind of challenge. So these two would be in balance, and we would still feel that we need to, pay attention and stretch a bit and put in a bit of an effort. I will explore this balance in this chart just tiny bit more in this episode, and then I will move ahead to other 4 very important and practical and short characteristics of what we can do to make sure the flow happens. I didn't want to skip starting with this balance because it's one of the most important characteristics, but I'm also exploring this balance to more depth in podcast episode number 3, where I talk about how to challenge your learner high without, breaking them or overstretching them. So if you want to explore deeper that specific balance, how to challenge people but not over challenge them, definitely check that one. Now, if we create challenge that is too high, being it in our workshop or in our life, then what will happen will be that people will feel a bit overstretched and they will not feel comfortable and they will feel like they cannot really cope with that challenge well. And that will lead us to the state that we call shortly stress. So different emotions related to different levels of stress. Maybe if challenge is just tiny bit too high, but they don't really feel skillful, maybe they'll feel just tiny bit worried. Or maybe if challenge is fairly high and they feel their skills are low, it will even go towards more anxiety. Or maybe they'll be in a bit more stable place, one we call arousal or alertness, or even driven is sometimes a good word for that. And that's a state when challenge is really high and we feel our skill is not really matching it, but we still feel we might be successful in it, but we are not super confident that we will. So it's a bit like flow, but with higher pressure. And it keeps us more on tip of our toes, and in some way it stretches us a bit more and we feel less relaxed. And as such, it's state that's less good state for learning than flow, but it is a state that definitely within the workshop is welcome for a short moment when we launch the new challenge initially. So overall, whenever the challenge is too high and people don't feel skillful enough, we will create sense of stress. If we do the opposite, if we under-challenge our learner, I would say this is more common in workshop space, but if we under-challenge them, if we set them with some tasks and challenges that frankly are simply too easy for them, then they will be in a state that we call boredom or relaxation, maybe even apathy if it's really low challenge, like boredom or relaxation, which means just they're taking it easy. It can also be state of control if it's already kind of close to flow and we have high skills and there is some challenge. We are not bored, we are a little bit challenged, but still it's kind of control or routine because our skills are higher than that challenge is. So when we put all that together, we really see that groups of emotions that commonly happen when we encounter challenge and challenges any activity or learning that is put ahead of us, we basically get these three, let's say, groups of emotions that we can create. One is boredom, which means we under-challenged our learner. The other group is stress or anxiety, which means we overstretched our learner a little bit. And the third one is ideally flow, which means we balanced the challenge and skill fairly well. And that can mean we challenge them highly and they have high skill, but it can also mean we challenge them moderately and they have moderate skill or ability to deal with it. Now, how to move around this chart and how to apply more challenge or less challenge, how to support people better, that's something I explored a lot in episode number 3. So hop over to that one if that's interesting for you. For now, for today, the main thing I wanted to share with you about this is that the first step to building more flow is to ask yourself, how can I ensure that my learners are challenged to a right level? And how can I ensure that they're not actually stressed so that I'm not pushing them too hard? And how can I ensure that they're not bored or too relaxed? And you just want to question that. How do they actually feel? And where do they need to move on the flow chart? Does the challenge need to be hard? Does the support need to be higher? Not going to go deeper in that one because I went quite deeper in episode number 3. But that is your first step towards flow. Once we have that, once we have meaningful way of setting the challenge for our learner, then we can move on to other 4 characteristics of flow. So in Csikszentmihalyi research, and he did like more than 20, 30 years of research on flow, and in his first book called Flow, which is an amazing book and I can highly recommend it, he talks about 10 characteristics of flow. And we can think about many more characteristics, but the 4 I'm sharing with you today are really focused on being practical. So these are some of the characteristics of flow state which we can actually influence to get more flow. Some of the others are, for example, the time distortion, that we need stop thinking about time. That's not something that we can influence so easily and to say, oh, I will not think about time. So that's why I didn't include these, but really focused on the 4 that are much more action-oriented. And I would even say they maybe go in order of importance, of order in which it makes sense to build them. So the first thing that we have to build within learning experience and within any activity to ensure flow can happen is having a clear goal for activity. And one thing that is really important to understand about goal when we talk about flow is that goal needs to be time bounded to a period of time when we engage with that activity in that moment. In other words, this has nothing to do with our big goals, life goals, career goals, whole workshop goals, or maybe whole, week-long course goals or anything else. This is really about when people engage with specific activity, do they have clarity what they're trying to achieve within that activity? And this is why games sometimes can backfire if they're just about playfulness without a bit of rules and goals. And it's also why games can be great playing field for flow if they're built in a way that they have these characteristics satisfied. So if you like to use a lot of gamification in your training, make sure that you include this element. So goal needs to be clear, needs to be time-bounded, and needs to be moderately challenging. And people need to be really clear what they're trying to do in this specific engagement with that activity. So not in general, not in the whole day, but in this specific activity. And the same goes for us if we're engaging with something like sports activity. We don't need our goal in general for that activity. We need a clear goal for right now. As I'm entering activity, what am I trying to achieve today within next couple of hours or whatever, less or more. The second very related characteristic that we must have present is feedback. And here I'm not talking about manager style of feedback or peer-to-peer feedback. You're doing this well and this is what you should improve and these are your strengths and weaknesses. Nothing to do with that. In the context of flow, feedback is simply an indicator. Am I moving well towards my goal? And one of the easiest way to explain it is if we, for example, imagine the activity of mountain climbing. Let's say we have somebody who gets into flow while they're mountain climbing. Their goal is to climb a certain cliff, a certain rock, and as they're engaging with it, their feedback is simply the fact that they know where they are on the rock and they see visually how much they have left and they feel how well are they doing, are they actually progressing. So that feedback doesn't always have to be super measurable. It's not about that. And it doesn't always have to be from someone else. In other words, feedback can be our own assessment of how are we doing, but then we need to have some sort of clarity on that, right? Depending on what the activity is. Or it can be feedback from someone else who tells us how we are doing, or it can be some sort of measurement. But whatever it is, why we need feedback is so we would feel that within that activity, we are actually successfully moving towards our goal. That's what we need from feedback. Otherwise, flow doesn't really happen because there is no that pathway towards the goal. Okay, so this is again for trainers, before moving to characteristic number 3, this again means that when people engage with activity, we also want to think, how will they know that they're doing well? And to be fair, for some activities, when they have clear goal, they'll simply know. It will be obvious to them. Are they managing? Are they coping well or not? But sometimes you will need to think, how can I add a layer of feedback through certain metrics, measurement, mini milestones that they can conquer on the way, or maybe some sort of feedback from the trainer or from others. Now, our characteristic number 3 is focus. And this is probably easiest breaking point where we don't get flow in life, in work, and well, also in workshops, but in every aspect of our life. This is the one that very often can sabotage us really a lot because it's quite broken. In our society, in a way, we are very used to distractions and many stimuli. So for focus, you simply need to know that for flow to happen, people need to be really in high focus state. That means they should not be experiencing disruptions from the activity that they're doing. You should not ask them in the middle of activity, hey, what will you have for lunch today? Or they should not have their phones with them. They should not have, side questions or side conversations, because all of this will actually disrupt the flow of activity. Flow is often, especially in the context of workshops, can also be achieved in a group activity and as a group. So often conversation will serve as something that pulls us into flow. Because of that, it's not really about this single focus and I'm with myself and just focusing on something. It can also be focused on a conversation, but it's important that we're really present in whatever it is that we are doing. And there are a couple of things that we can support that as trainers. One is to simply communicate it like that, to communicate in advance and at the beginning of a workshop, some ways to support our participants to remove distractions. Get rid of the phone, get rid of anything else for the period of learning. In virtual space, that's more difficult, to be honest, but still, even there, we can launch a couple of invitations and share why, and by communicating why our workshop is relevant, we will motivate people to protect that a bit more. So we can rely on that ownership, but then we can also help them by protecting the space from distractions, but making sure we don't have interruptions, by making sure that they interrupt each other, and really communicating that importance of focus. Of course, it helps even more if you have a topic of workshop that relates to focus or mindfulness or good listening or something like that. But this is something where we can always give more invitations and also pay attention that we protect the space. Okay, and the last one, the characteristic number 4, and then I will still wrap them up a little bit together. And by the way, just a reminder, you can download all of these in handout in the episode notes. So if you feel like, you need a bit of reflection, how to actually do that, how to put it in practice, which one is weak or strong in your workshops, definitely download that handout and check there, what else can you apply and reflect on it a bit. Now, the last one is one that we don't always have, again, full control over, but it's really, really important for flow, and we can play with it in 2 different ways. And that is the intrinsic motivation. Basically, people are much more likely to get into flow if they're actually motivated intrinsically for the activity they're doing. So they're not in it for compliance or certain reward, but they're in it because they wanted to show up. So if you're now saying something like, oh, but my learners never want to show up, their manager makes them, or anything like that, don't worry. I will touch on that briefly as well. But I do want to say that we can play into intrinsic motivation with our learner in two different ways. One way is by giving them more ownership and choice. If they choose some elements of their activity, or maybe their role in an activity, if they have choice over that, they will definitely be more motivated for the engaging in it. So we want to think always with more choice and ownership in mind, which in general in training, we always want to think like that. That might be an amazing other episode topic. So if you think I should talk about that in one of the podcast episodes, do ping me on LinkedIn or via Trainers Toolbox newsletter. Let me know. You would love to hear more about ownership and how to give more ownership. The second thing that we can do about intrinsic motivation is to work with participants' mindset. And this is again something we can't super over-engineer, and we can't make someone be motivated or change their mind about things, but we can use different coaching questions or facilitation questions to actually make them more motivated and more engaged. And some of the ways we can do that is also by asking them what within this activity is relevant for them, by having more clear activity goal and learning goal that we share with them, which is good for flow anyway. And in general, by underlining more relevance of that learning and activity, and relevance really in terms of how will it help in their own life, not just in the workshop. And also by building more connections with the group, because then if they're also in a good atmosphere, if the emotion is great on the training, that will also fuel the motivation. Emotion in learning, it's a huge topic and really important one, and one we don't talk about enough, and one that too often is neglected. How your participants actually feel through their learning journey hugely shapes how they think, how they participate, how they show up, and ultimately what they learn. That's why one of the learning experiences you can also join me for, it's the course, online course, fairly short one, 3 modules only, called Building Emotional Journeys. And on that one, we really play with that. How can we shape and influence participants' motivation, emotion, energy in a way that truly supports their learning journey and their insights? So if that sounds like something that would be interesting to play, and especially if it sounds like something that would add an extra layer of impact and engagement to your workshops, do join me on that one. You can check it out in the descriptions. Now, intrinsic motivation is really important because ultimately it also guides how much people are ready to challenge themselves, and also how much are they actually focusing within the activity. So we want to seek how can we build more of that. And one of the ways of doing it is very much through just inviting people into reflecting what motivates them into that activity. Now, these were our 4 characteristics, plus the balance between challenge and skill, or challenge and ability. Those are in total 5 tools you can use and strengthen in order to build more flow. So on one side, setting clear goal, that's also at the right level of challenge. Building some system of feedback, or ensuring that there is some sort of feedback to how are they doing. Protecting their focus and inviting them to protect it. And finally, strengthening their intrinsic motivation, or by giving more ownership so they can choose what they're motivated for, or by also working a bit with their mindset and attitude in order to build a bit more of that. If you would like to dive deeper into the flow, definitely check episode number 3 about challenging participants more, and definitely consider joining me for the longer masterclass, online one, where we really dive in also into practical, what does this mean, how can we map it. These are quite practical tips already, but how can we map it even more to our workshop? Link is also in the description, and remember to download the handout in the description. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be really grateful if you would share it, subscribed, liked, in any way support the channel, especially it's still a fairly young channel, so all the reactions are really welcome. If you have some feedback, wishes, ideas for future episodes and future topics, you know where to find me. The best places are LinkedIn, also linked in the episode description, and also through Trainers Toolbox newsletter. If you're not on the weekly newsletter yet, do subscribe. It's in the episode description as well. I send it weekly with many different tips, or sometimes with news about the new episodes as well, but it's also the best way to be in touch because you can always reply to the weekly newsletter and let me know your thoughts, wishes, and next ideas. Now, finally, I want to leave you with recommendation for a book. Flow is one of my favorite books. It's one that made me fall in love with positive psychology in 2008 or 9. It's written by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the greatest name and the greatest researcher in the world of flow. And it's really beautifully written book, engaging, immersive. You can have some flow while you're reading about flow. So highly recommended Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi book on flow. I'm linking it also in the episode description. And finally, if you're always on a lookout for great new books, I will also link the ultimate book list from Trainers Toolbox, so you can also discover your other new favorite books for the future. Thank you for staying with me today, and do connect and get in touch if you have any thoughts on this episode. Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found some exciting ideas and valuable tools that you will use already today. Remember, they only work if you put them in practice, but then they make all the difference. If you enjoy Trainers Toolbox podcast, do leave a rating and review. It does mean a lot. And if you haven't done it yet, click on the links in the episode descriptions and discover free materials and valuable resources to dive in deeper. See you in the next episode or at Trainers Toolbox newsletter.